with the PDK, if I go into my code directory, I can just say PDK new module, and let's say my module, for example. And this will create a completely fresh module.
Could you move the window a bit up, please?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, like this. That's better. So it will ask you a couple of default questions: versioning, who wrote the module, licensing, what you want it to support. Well, let's not do so Red Hat and Windows, for example. And then maybe a summarize. This is and if you have a source repo, you can provide it. URL to point people to, public issue tracker if you have one. Yep, alright. And so now you see that we have a my module location which has everything that we recommend for a best practice module. And so if I open this, who is aware of the VS Code editor and the public plugin for that? Okay, so even more interesting stuff. So this is a free editor. Of course, there are many free editors, but this one is available for all operating systems. So Mac, Linux, and Windows. It's maintained by Microsoft, and it supports a plugin model. And we have created a Puppet Code plugin for this. So I can open up the, let's see, let's close this one. You can open up this one, and you will see that it has built-in support for Puppet. So I can say a new file here, and say like test.pp, and it will automatically detect that. It will, if you see there in the bottom, it automatically starts up the Puppet agent on my machine. So it works best if you have a Puppet agent on it. It can just be a plain install, doesn't have to be reporting into a master, and it will get all of the syntax and language controls from the agent directly, including all of the documentation. So, let's see if it does that. There we go. So now I can say, for example, class. So I get all of this automatic IntelliSense type stuff, and I can just say, okay, so this would be my module, for example. And I can say here package, nano, ensure present, file, and you see that all of this stuff makes it a lot easier to do. And if I do make a mistake, so for example, if I forget to put in, so let's make a couple of mistakes here. I forgot the comma, and I didn't put the brackets at the correct size. Then it will show you right here. So it has built-in linter support, built-in syntax validation, and it will point you on where that is. Live updates when you fix all of these issues. This helps you a lot in making sure that your Puppet code as well. And this has Git integration. So from here you can automatically pull and push to your source control. So it's a very nice way of managing your Puppet code. Now the PDK goes a step further, so it's a good way to create a fresh module, and it will give you, for example, a best practice Travis file if you want to link it to your Travis a user account for automatic validation of your code. It has a Robocop setup. It has it automatically creates all of the unit tests, for example. So if I want to create a fresh a fresh item, I can say pdk new class, and if I don't do, I do have to say init, for example. Sorry. If I name it the same as my module, then it automatically creates an init. So we'll see that right here. It creates the defaults. Oh, I don't need test anymore. And it will also create the accompanying unit tests. So with now, for example, this class created, and I could create a new one. So new class test, a fresh one. So I have a couple of these here. I can now say pdk, I think it's pdk test unit, and this now runs actual unit tests on this. So this is set up by default. The default unit test is an RSpec compilation, so it's configured that it must compile. So any syntax changes or any code errors that are not caught by the syntax change or the syntax check, but they would result in a failed compilation, will be caught by the unit test. And you can run actually, you can, pdk validate the whole module this way, and then it will do the whole thing. And this you could make a part of your standard code checking, for example. So here we got, of course, this is a freshly created module and freshly created code. If I now do something in this code, I can run this again and it finds it. So this is a great way of improving your Puppet coding this way, and having the capability to make use of all of the best practices that we are continually bringing to the community in this way. This is the 1.3 version, which does it. It has the convert feature, so this will allow you to convert any existing module that you have today to this best practice standard. So you can do it in a way that it will first show you what it will add to the module and what changes it might make to, for example, your your gem file or your rake file or your metadata file, so that you can see whether this is something that may need some changes afterwards. You can give it information to ignore certain parts that you've configured a certain way. And in the 1.4 version that has been released yesterday, we now have a PDK update capability, which will allow you to update converted modules with the latest best practices. So we know in each version that we release what the best practices are around all of the integrations that we provide out of the box and all the module setup. And you can bring that forward automatically by using PDK update. And then also a feature that's in the 1.4 is a PDK build option, which you can use to create a Forge uploadable tar file directly from here.
How does that work with all the versions of Puppet?
It still works, but we recommend, of course, that you upgrade your code. But you can use the PDK for all the versions. You'll just have to be careful on what you're using in the language, what constructs. And of course, it uses whatever agent you put on your machine. So if you put a 3.8 agent on your machine, then the code checking that it does will be based on what the agent tells it is good. Right. So that's the PDK. And the code manager. Oh, leave this open.
No.
Don't forget anything. So the next part is, if you're doing Puppet open source, the only way that you have of moving code to Puppet from a code repository is R10K. Now the way that you can do this in Puppet Enterprise is through Code Manager. So Code Manager is provided out of the box with Puppet Enterprise, and it gives you a really easy way of linking your code repository to Puppet. So it is in So all that you need actually is to set up these four items. So what I'm showing you here is the Puppet node classifier, and I'll show you a little bit more in a moment of that, which can augment and or fully replace your site.pp file, so that you don't have to do manual classification of nodes. This can all be role-based, and in Puppet Enterprise, a lot of the core variables of the system you can manage through the node classifier as well. So all you need to do is, from these parameter sets for the master profile, is set Code Manager auto-configure to true, give it your private key and the location of where your control repo lives on your control repo or your source controls server, and that's it actually. And then it will go out to, so here I have a GitLab based control repo, where in the Puppet file I have a set of modules from the Forge that I have configured here, a set of Windows modules, a set of Linux modules, a couple from my own, and one from GitHub. And you set your control repo as one of the first right here. And then you set up a webhook in integrations. GitLab moves this around in the different versions of it. So you can set up a webhook. So I have a push event webhook right here that connects to Puppet Code Manager, which means that as soon as I do a commit on my control repository, it will automatically kick off a code deploy on the Puppet server, so that the code gets into Puppet, and any change and anything that's in my Puppet file will move with that as well. So if I change any of my other repos, like here, it doesn't automatically kick off a code deploy. So I can make changes here, and only when in the control repo I either kick off the webhook or make a change right there, then it will get everything from the control repo and any of the other tools that I'm linking to. And the other way that you can do it is on the master itself. There is a Puppet code deploy command, and I can say all, and I can say wait, so that you can see it here. And this is basically the same as what the webhook would kick off. It will connect to your version control and get all the environments. The thing that this simplifies a lot is if you have multiple environments. So in my control repo, I just basically created another branch, and you can create another branch by just typing one in and hitting enter, and it will create one. So by default I have a dev and a production branch, and Code Manager automatically finds those branches and then creates environments for those. So it's an easy way to get it set up and don't really worry about all of the code synchronization anymore. So another one is the node classifier. So if you've not seen Puppet Enterprise before, the node classification system allows you to create computer groups or node groups, and in those node groups you can dynamically make machines a member of it. So for example, here I have a set called Linux systems, where everything but the master itself, if it's running on a Linux kernel, should be a member of this group. On any of these rules, I can click on show and it will show me the amount of nodes that match to this rule. And in the matching nodes, you'll see exactly which ones it is seeing right now and which ones are actively reporting in. Anything that's over 7 days not reporting in will start to disappear from here. And you can pin specific nodes. So this is useful if you're doing more of a hard-coded pinning. And then you can tie in the configuration right here. Adding in a class like my app, for example, is something that you can do from right here. Once you do that, if I, for example, do the VMware tools for Windows, it will also automatically get all of the parameters that are exposed by the module, so that you can set them directly here from the interface, like this. So this is a useful way of managing this stuff. The only thing that you don't have right now is version control within the node classifier in Puppet. You can do like regular exports of the information so that you can import an older version. That's one way you can do this today. But in production, what we mostly see is that customers use Hyra to do the assignment of classes to nodes so that you can use all of the version control capabilities in your GitLab or GitHub server where Hyra then lives to be able to roll back to other definitions if you want to. Something that's added in 2017.3 and later is the capability to now set parameters for either basic, mostly used your modules. So for example, Apache name, you can now automatically create this without having to define the class. You don't have to tie it to a machine, which allows you to set up values, and it doesn't have to be an actual module. You can just type something here and it will create a Hyra value of that type and parameter and that value right here.
But this is something that I don't really want to use because it conflicts with the higher data that I have in Git version control repository.
It doesn't conflict, it adds on top. So it overrides.
Where do you know what is defined?
Yeah, so the default way that it is configured, this will be the first one that is checked. So you can use this as like a global override, where if for some reason you want, based on this node hierarchy level, at some point you want to say from here on out it needs to use this value, or you want to define a value that you don't have in Hyra, for example, then that is something that you can leverage this way. It's just a different way of working with the system, with which might be interesting for customers that have no experience with Puppet whatsoever and want a simpler way to start. They can they can start from here. If you're a more advanced user, you're going to use Hyra. And then what I like from here is that this has an inheritance model. So for example, the Linux hosts group has the Linux systems as parent, which means that now I don't have to worry about other systems also classifying into this group. So the only group, the only machines that will classify into here can only come from the Linux systems parent group. So that allows me like a simple way of filtering lower and lower down without having to reconfigure all of the other items every time. And then, so for example here, I have one that does it based on host names with a regular expression, and then adds, for example, the Docker profile to install Docker on top of that. So that's the node classification system. And then there's role-based access control. So role-based access control allows you to link to an external directory like LDAP or Active Directory and be able to log into the console with those credentials. and then allows you to set up. You can still make users locally in Puppet if you want to, but usually most customers that leverage this feature tie it into AD or LDAP. And then you can use the reducer role capability to define what activities you can perform in this environment. It's not full-on multi-tenancy today, but you can, especially if you have teams that need to manage their own nodes or have some more specific capabilities on only being able to change configuration for a group of nodes and not for others, then you can do that right here. So you can set up a group that has a number of users in there, and that, for example, can manage a couple of node groups. And for example, here they have full rights on everything going down from, for example, the Linux host group. And this is a way to set this up. This also integrates with tasks. So now for a specific user, you can say whether they can roll all or only run specific tasks. And in the upcoming version, they will be able to limit this even the scope. So against specific node groups, for example.